Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical themes in Italy's Euro triumph over England. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have England starting in a 3-4-2-1 and Italy remaining in a 4-3-3. So first, we're going to break down how Kane was decisive in that opening half, and then we're going to shift to how Mancini adjusted his system to ensure that Italy were able to dominate the game. So when you look at both shapes on the board, you'd expect Italy to initially start the game by pressing higher up the pitch, with their front three closing down the back three, Emerson and Di Lorenzo potentially pushing out to Trippier and Shaw. You have Verratti and Barella who should be stepping out to Phillips and Rice. And then you have 3v3 with Chiellini and Bonucci being able to shift out into those wider areas. Or if you want Jorginho shifting out into those wider areas, one of the center backs can deal with Harry Kane. The other alternative for Italy was to drop off deeper into more of a 5-4-1. If Walker and Maguire look to push forward, then you could have Verratti or Barella stepping to the vacant center back, and then Jorginho would cover their man. But if Italy were looking to do that, then Insigne and Chiesa would have to track the movement of Shaw and Trippier, and that's where you would see Emerson and Di Lorenzo dealing with Mount and Sterling. It leaves Chiellini and Bonucci in a 2v1 against Kane, but that's where you ended up seeing Kane dropping off deeper into that midfield zone to get on the ball, and it was most often on the right hand side, and that's where you would end up seeing Trippier and Walker looking to make runs beyond Insigne into that right channel to create overloads against Emerson. Ultimately, that was the key to England's success in the opening half. In the build up to England's opener, it's Kane receiving the ball in this pocket of space in his own half, and he ends up switching the ball beyond Insigne into the path of Trippier, who is ahead of Emerson and Chiellini, and now you could see Walker beginning to make an overlapping run. As Walker continues to push forward, he drags away Chiellini and Emerson into left half space, and that's where you could see Kane beginning to make a move into Italy's penalty area. Because neither Chiellini or Emerson step into the path of Trippier, you have Sterling beyond Bonucci and Kane looking to make a run in between Di Lorenzo and Barella, which leaves Shaw free in left half space. As that cross is delivered, you could see Kane taking away both Italy defenders, and it allows Shaw to put England up 1-0. Later on, you could see Kane receiving the ball from Shaw and spinning away from Barella, and he ends up shifting out the ball into the path of Walker, and that's where you see Trippier now beginning to make a run beyond Insigne, who's in a defensive position. Walker ends up sliding the ball across Insigne into the path of right half space for Trippier, and from this position, he only has Sterling making a run in between the two center backs, and when he delivers the ball in towards that penalty area, it's Chiellini clearing it in the 6-yard box. Here you can see Maguire sliding the ball across Barella's pressure into the path of Kane, dropping ahead of Chiesa, and that results in Kane skipping beyond Chiesa, and that's where you see Verratti and Jorginho looking to step towards him, but you have Sterling making a run across Emerson and Trippier free in the right channel. When Trippier receives the ball, only Sterling's in the box, and from here he should be squaring it into Mount approaching the penalty area. But with Emerson not stepping towards him, he attempts to clip a ball into the box, but it bypasses Sterling, and it falls to Di Lorenzo, who concedes the corner. Because if you look at other areas where they were looking to exploit this Italy backline, we had Sterling receiving the ball in pockets of space between Insigne and Verratti as he dropped off Emerson, but he often failed to make an impact when he looked to run at goal. Over on the opposite flank, Luke Shaw was often closed down tight by Chiesa or Di Lorenzo if he was stepping forward. So that ultimately meant that if Kane wasn't creating from those deeper areas, he was able to win free kicks in Italy's half, and he was looking to get Sterling and Mount into attacking positions and behind. But the other issue that England encountered was that when Kane received the ball in these zones, sometimes Sterling and Mount weren't making the correct runs, and when England did get themselves into key areas in the final third, they often made the wrong decision. Once again, you could see Rice splitting Jorginho and Barella for Kane dropping off the center backs, but focus on Mount and Sterling. Neither are making runs in behind, and as Kane looks to push forward, that's where you see Barella and Jorginho applying pressure and forcing him backwards. If we look to an example, you have Rice on the ball in the halfway circle with neither Jorginho or Barella being able to step towards him, and that's where Rice looks to split them to find Kane in between the lines. When Kane receives the ball, you could see Barella looking to track back to close him down, with Mount looking to make a run off Di Lorenzo and Sterling in a position ahead of Chiellini. However, as you could see, Mount doesn't make a run in behind Di Lorenzo, and that allows Barella to apply pressure and it forces Kane back. Following a Pickford punt, you could see Kane towering over Chiellini to nod the ball into the path of Mount and Sterling, who are in a 2v2 with Di Lorenzo and Bonucci. When Kane wins the header, it falls into the path of Sterling, who's now ahead of Bonucci Bonucci, and that's where you see Mount preparing to make a run between both Italian defenders to drag Di Lorenzo out of the game. Sterling slides the ball across Bonucci, and it does place Mount in a position where all he needs to do is play a first-time squared ball across Di Lorenzo into the path of Sterling breaking into the box, but instead he looks to cut it back for Sterling at the edge of the box, and it allows Bonucci to step in. Meanwhile, when we focus on England, they dropped off into a 5-4-1 to combat Italy's 3-2-5, as there was no surprise to how Italy were looking to attack in this game. Emerson was pushing higher up the pitch down the left-hand side, and Chiellini shifted across as Di Lorenzo held his position. What you ended up seeing from England was that Kane was dropping off to deal with Jorginho or Verratti if he moved beyond Jorginho, but for the most part, it was Kane near Jorginho. Rice won the battle against Barella, who was looking to push higher up the pitch. And then Phillips would deal with Verratti. And Verratti looked to shift into an inside left position. Then Sterling would be able to deal with them as Emerson was pegging back Trippier. Walker was tracking the movement of Insigne. And then Phillips was able to drop off deeper to create a 3v2 in that zone. Even if Verratti looked to push beyond Sterling, that does make it 3v3 in that area. Here you can see an example of Kane, not Chiellini, stepping towards Jorginho, and look at Italy's left side. Sterling's near Verratti. You have Trippier being able to step into the path of Insigne, but he's prepared to push forward to Emerson, and that would force Walker to step forward or Phillips to shift across. And then you could see Sterling stepping into the path of Verratti, picking up the ball in a deeper position, with Phillips shifting across into the path of Insigne, and Trippier dealing with Emerson, which leaves Walker as the spare man. And the biggest issue that Italy encountered in that opening half was that when Immobile dropped off deeper to receive the ball, he failed to link play with his teammates. Over on the right-hand side, because Di Lorenzo was holding a deeper narrow position, Chiesa was occupying the touchline, but even in his battle with Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire was able to shift across for cover. Frankly, the only real threat that Italy presented from open play was when Chiesa was able to drop off deeper to receive the ball, and then he was able to break challenges against this England midfield to run at the back line. In terms of the second half, the biggest issue that England encountered was that they dropped off deeper into that 5-4-1, and they failed to have an outlet to push higher up the pitch when they did receive possession. Italy ended up pushing more men forward. What we ended up seeing was that Chiellini was now moving into England's half to force Sterling to step towards him. It was Mancini's tactical tweak in bringing on Cristante and Berardi that ultimately shifted the game. This moved Insigne into a central position. Berardi was now holding the touchline, but he was looking to make runs across Shaw when the chance presented itself. And now we ended up seeing Cristante moving beyond Phillips to occupy Maguire. The key here was Insigne dropping off into midfield zones to receive the ball, and it helped Italy sustain pressure, link play, and now we ended up seeing Chiesa on that left-hand side looking to receive the ball in deeper positions, and at times moving to the touchline to occupy Trippier, while Emerson or Chiellini was pushing forward into that gap between Trippier and Walker. Initially, you witnessed Chiesa receiving a switch of play in a deep inside left position, with Emerson preparing to make an overlapping run. As Chiesa carries the ball towards Walker and Trippier, that's where you see Sterling recovering his position to make it 1v3 around the penalty area. However, neither Trippier, Walker, or Sterling look to make a challenge, and it allows Chiesa to carry the ball into left half space, and from this position they should be comfortable. However, Chiesa's cross is deflected into the path of Insigne running across Rice, but Rice does a good job of forcing Insigne into this position, and he can only force Pickford into a comfortable save. Shortly after that, it's Verratti splitting Phillips and Sterling to find Chiesa dropping off ahead of the England backline as Insigne moves into the gap between Walker and Trippier. That results in Chiesa carrying the ball towards the penalty area, and once again, even though you have Insigne and Emerson to his left, he's closed down by 3 England players. However, once again, neither Phillips, Walker, or Trippier look to make a challenge, but even in this position, if Chiesa is able to get across Walker, Stones is in a good position to close him down quickly to ensure that he doesn't get a shot off. However, while Chiesa does get across Walker and Stones does shift across for cover, neither are able to get tight on Chiesa, and they give him a shooting lane to get an effort on goal, but it's Pickford who pushes it away from that position. And then even in the build-up to the corner that led to Italy's equalizer, it's Chiesa on the ball in a deep inside left position ahead of Trippier, and this time you see Chiellini in between Trippier and Walker with Rice shifting across. What England don't want is for Chiesa to put the ball onto his right foot to deliver a cross into the penalty area, but even when you look in that zone, it's only Insigne with the possibility of Cristante making a run in that Shaw-Maguire gap. even with Trippier and Rice shifting across, because there's no threat of Chiellini in that left channel, neither of the England players are able to close down Chiesa from making that delivery into that area. And what you end up seeing is Cristante now making that run off Maguire, who's monitoring the movement of Insigne beyond Stones. And ultimately, Chiesa's delivery does bypass Stones and Insigne, and Maguire's forced to make a vital clearance that leads to the corner that Italy do convert from. Southgate didn't make a tactical change until the Italy equalizer, and he ended up bringing on Jordan Henderson and Bukayo Saka and shifting to a 4-5-1. This change ensured that now England matched up Italy across the pitch, and what you ended up seeing was that midfield overload was now nullified. Kane was able to sit on Jorginho, Verratti dropped off deeper, but Henderson was pushing out towards him, and if he dropped off into an inside left position, Saka would step forward to close him down. And then Mount was tasked with dealing with Cristante, and if Insigne looked to drop off deeper, Phillips could cope with that threat. What we also ended up seeing was that now England had an additional ball retention player in that attacking zone, and Saka did a very good job of receiving the ball and looking to break forward, and that ultimately led to free kicks that England won in Italy's third. Here you could see Saka receiving the ball ahead of Emerson's pressure and dropping it off to Kane ahead of the back four. But Kane fails to play a positive pass in between Bonucci and Emerson for Saka to break free 1v1. Later on, it's Saka checking into the ball in a deeper position ahead of Emerson, and you can see Henderson making a run across Verratti into the gap beyond the left back to create space for Saka to cut into. But when Saka cuts central, it's Verratti sliding in to concede the foul. And then here you could see Saka receiving the ball beyond Chiesa from Walker, and when he carries the ball towards the penalty area, that forces Saka to play the ball back into the path of Phillips, and that results in a late Insigne challenge on Phillips that awards England a free kick in Italy's third. So as you can see, while Kane's ability to pick up the ball in midfield zones proved decisive in the early stages of this match, a combination of Mancini's decision to utilize Insigne in a central role, England's inability to close down Chiesa, and Southgate's reluctance to adjust led to the hosts' downfall.